Hi, I'm Kristen, and this is the Simple Handmade Everyday Podcast where I talk about living a creative, intentional life. I like to chat about quilting, sometimes knitting, what I'm reading and watching, and a little bit about self-care, productivity, and keeping a cozy, organized home. I've got my cup of tea in hand, so grab yours and let's settle in for a chat. This is episode 85. Welcome friends, new and old. How are you guys? It is a beautiful spring morning here in Southern California, early April. We're having some very nice kind of high 60-degree weather today. It's absolutely lovely to hang out outside, and then it's going to get bloody hot for the rest of the week, like way too hot for March. It's crazy, the ups and downs we're going through. So grab your cup of tea or coffee or whatever you like to drink. I have something new to me. It's Harney & Sons Japanese sencha green tea. I mentioned last podcast that for my birthday, one of my kids got me this big, it's called the gray linen tea box. It's just absolutely impressive looking, almost like the size of a board game box. And you open it up and it has all this beautiful selection of very nice quality teas. So I'm trying a new one to me, a green tea, Japanese sencha, and it is perfect for this little afternoon. I'm drinking a little less caffeine, so just a little right now. So just a little bit of caffeine in a green tea is kind of perfect for the afternoon. So what else is going on? I mentioned before that we've got 2 dogs now, and that has been really taking up, frankly, a lot of my time. I've never had 2 dogs before, and one of them, the new little guy, whose name is Ollie. We maybe had not named him for my last podcast. His name's Oliver. Call him Ollie. He's a little bit of a crazy dude. And so we actually have taken the step to sign up for some dog training classes. We got away without doing that with our last dog, and it was never a great idea. So I'm happy to learn how to do things right here. You know, the other thing that we've gotten into, which I'm almost embarrassed to tell you, is we've gotten into cooking their food, like giving them real food. This happened with the rescue that the second dog came from. He came with this food called Just Food for Dogs that you can buy, and it's like the most affordable one of those is this mixture of ground turkey and some vegetables and whole wheat macaroni and things like that. Like, you could eat it. I wouldn't, but you could. And it was frankly too expensive to maintain that, and so we looked into it, and I actually just bought a cookbook. But we've been sort of batch cooking every week or two, a big thing, and freezing, keeping half in the fridge and half in the freezer. A couple different recipes that involve, again, ground turkey and carrots and zucchini and sweet potatoes and broccoli and an egg and some turmeric. And one of them has brown rice and one has the whole wheat macaroni. And man, do they love it. We still have a lot of kibble left over, so we're still mixing a little kibble in there. But yeah, it's it's kind of fun. It feels good to give dogs food that they really like. Because, if you're like me, you've always been told, give them kibble, don't give them wet food. But we did some research, and giving them real food is actually good for them. So anyway, so that's a new hobby. It's cooking for dogs. So last weekend, we headed down to San Diego, which, again, we are so blessed that all 3 of our kids are in San Diego. 2 graduated from college and working, and 1 at school. So we took the youngest back after spring break, and we were able to celebrate my oldest, Chloe, her birthday. And that was a very fun day. Her birthday is right at spring break, which was always great when she was in school because she almost never had to go to school on her birthday. Well, the problem is whatever outing you try to plan is always crazy. I know one time we went to Disneyland on her birthday, and it was like a terrible idea. So we're in San Diego looking for something to do, and everywhere we went, it was just packed out. And then one of my sons said, remember that, what was it called? A treasure hunt thing? Scavenger hunt, that's the word. We did one time in Ventura, and it was something that I had bought as like a Christmas gift, and it was very fun. So it's an app. It's called Let's Roam. I'll put a link in the show notes. It used to be called scavengerhunt.com, but I think someone bought them out. And actually, for San Diego, he just downloaded a free trial because we just wanted it for one day, and picked the gas lamp district of San Diego as a treasure hunt. And so it's on the phone, and they have you go from kind of landmark to landmark. And they're not huge landmarks. They're like, this is the first bank building, or this is the, this is where Wyatt Earp used to meet people at. That was one of them. There's a whole like Wyatt Earp thing in the gas lamp district, because it's just right off the coast of San Diego there, right? So pretty close inland, so people could come in on ships pretty easily. But anyways, we just bopped around like tourists, San Diego, just finding, you find a landmark, and you usually have to take a picture, or you of yourself doing something, or you find some sort of piece of information off of the placard there. But it was about an hour and a half of just hanging out, walking outside in San Diego on a beautiful day, spending time together. So that was wonderful. And then we did, again, dinner in Little Italy in San Diego, which is beautiful. So so that kind of filled my cup again to get the family together like that. And I guess I've got you caught up. So let's head into our quilting segment. But before we do, as always, I'd like to thank the Fat Quarter Shop for sponsoring the podcast. The Fat Quarter Shop is a one-stop show for quilting fabrics and supplies for quilters around the world. They stock Quilt Shop quality fabrics, pre-cuts, quilt kits, patterns, notions, and even cross-stitch supplies. There's a couple things I want to tell you about them this month. This month, the basic of the month, which is 20% off of yardage and pre-cuts, is Zen Chic's spotted lines. Zen Chic is a Moda line, and I absolutely love her stuff. And she has this line called Spotted, which these are absolutely gorgeous fabrics of all different colors, but they read like a solid. They're a tone on tone, but have just so much more interest than a solid. So you could use them anywhere you'd use a solid, but it just gives it that little added oomph, and I absolutely love them. So it's a perfect time to stock up on those, especially those neutral backgrounds. That's what I'm going to do. I love those. So check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is this awesome, I think it would fall under the category of notions, that Fat Quarter Shop sent me, and it is called the Daisy Bee's Knees Book Stand. So this is from Lori Holt of Bee in My Bonnet. She has a whole line of really just fun notions, in addition to fabrics and patterns. I love her stuff. And so what this is, it's a book stand, and it's this buttery yellow, and it's perfect. It's in my sewing room. I've been using it. So it's perfect to hold a pattern book or just, patterns right there. For me, sometimes I'm tacking them up on the wall, or I'm constantly shuffling my patterns around on the table. They're always in the way, but I need to double check construction or measurements or things like that. So I love having this. It's an upright, it's kind of like if you could picture a cookbook holder or something like that. So, obviously you can use it for your tablet or a design board. I saw somebody online that had their design board kind of propped up at an angle right next to their sewing machine for just for a block. And I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. Mine's always kind of just flat down. So I might try that as well. It's metal. And that's cool because it's a great place to store needle minders. I love using needle minders when I am hand stitching or doing a binding, things like that, but I can never find them. If you're like me, I've got stuff stashed everywhere, and I can never find my needle minders. So now I have them right on this, because they're magnetic, right? So they stick right on this little stand. So it's very cute. Definitely check it out. I will put a link in the show notes. All right, let's talk quilting. When last I left you, I was telling you that I had one more block to make in my Sunshine and Shadows scrap quilt, and that it was going to be kind of a black and white or a very dark gray and white, but I had no fabric like that left in my stash after making masks. And my quilty friends came to the rescue, and thank you. Several people reached out to me and said, do you still need fabrics? Because I'll send you some. But the first two people, my friend Frances from the Off Kilter Quilt and Patty from Elm Street Quilt, they completely bailed me out, sent me fabrics, and I made it, and I'll take a picture of the block. It's very pretty. So then that was my 12th block for my 12 block quilt, my 3x4 layout, and I put it all together, and I don't love it. I love the pattern. It's not the pattern. So it's just... I'm not too into chaos. I like very controlled color palettes, and I love every single individual block. I love the navy block. I love the kind of pinky purpley block. I love the greeny blue block. I love the light gray block. I love the black block. But all together, I don't hate it, but I'm just like, yeah, this is not my favorite quilt. So I have not sewn those blocks together. And that won't take very long. It's just 12 big blocks. But I kind of wonder if I wouldn't have liked it more if I personally restricted the color palette more, if I kept them all kind of in the pastel-y, the pastel-y range, kind of a little bit more soft or more on the brighter side. Instead, I kind of mixed those two, thinking that would be more interesting. So live and learn. But I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to sew it up. It's quilt. I like it, but I was just like, oh, this is not exactly how I expected it to come out. But, that's just the way it is. So the next big quilt on my list is Cabin Valley, which I have already made one. So it's Cabin Valley by, I think it's Cotton and Joy. Absolutely love this pattern. Love the palette she made it in. And when I made it last time, when I bought the fabric, it takes I think it's 9 fat quarters. And I bought half yards of each of those, so I have enough to make a second quilt. And I really love this quilt, but I have a niece who is going through a very significant health crisis right now. And I was like, she needs this quilt. So off I packed the Cabin Valley to her. And I know she's already received it. I've already seen her picture of her snuggling with her young son in it. And so, I really love having a stash of quilts that are ready to go, which is why I'm so glad that I never had kind of put this into the rotation. So I was able to just, I did a poll in the Simple Handmade Everyday private Facebook group about whether or not you wash a quilt before you send it. And I would say that overwhelmingly people wash it. I never used to, but you know what? They're so much snugglier once you do. I was so glad that I did that. Plus, I do have pets, and so I think it's good to wash them. But I had my hand-piece quilt-along quilt. These were 2 quilts that I had, kind of recently finished, the Cabin Valley and the hand-piece quilt-along Harmony quilt. And they were just kind of sitting out, sort of decoratively, but not to be used. Actually, the hand-piece quilt-along one was in the couch in the front room. It could have been used, but, they're so pristine looking at first, because I do not pre-wash fabrics, that I did not feel inclined to grab it because they're a little bit stiff. And so after I washed this, the Cabin Valley before I mailed it off, I'm like, okay, this is what you got to do, because it just, you got the crinkle and it softens everything up. And so now I've used the Harmony quilt multiple times because it's so inviting. So I've changed my ways on that. But that felt really good. I mentioned early on when I started this podcast that it was my goal to be a less selfish quilter and to send people quilts inspired by a quilter in our community that died several years ago, and her children told people to, when they came to the funeral, to bring anything she'd made them, and the whole church was covered in quilts. And I thought, wow, that's a legacy. And so that's when I kind of changed my ways on that. Before that, I was a self-declared selfish quilter. So I received my layer cake of the new French general line called La Vie Bohème. And, I love me a French general line. So I'm going to get going on my table topper project. And I think I might have enough. So I bought the layer cake, which is all off-whites and faded reds and yummy blues. And there were 2, so, she has some solids that go with it. One's kind of an off-white linen-y type, and one's this yummy blue that's totally my signature color, a soft, not a baby blue. I need to know the name of it, but a very nice blue. And I wasn't sure which way I wanted to go with the borders, and now I'm realizing, you've got enough in that layer cake. You could just make this thing double-sided. You could just make one with the off-white border and one with the blue border, and that could be a little bit tricky to get them positioned to quilt and bind, but with the borders, you've got a little bit of forgiveness there. So anyways, I might attempt a double-sided table runner. So I'll tell you one thing I was thinking about. I'm not sure how it came up, but I started thinking about quilt guilds, and I'll make a note too. I'm going to put a little star by this so remember. I'll put a poll again, or a question in the Facebook group, the private Facebook group, not the Facebook page, where we can kind of just talk a little more freely. But are you a member of a quilt guild? I am feeling like I would like to be. There are a couple quilt guilds in my area, and I have tried them both years ago. I'm thinking now about, my son being in second grade and it not really working out. Well, he's in college now. So maybe I'm at a different point in my life. But where I am, the Camarillo Quilters is a huge guild. There's a retirement community in that town, and so it's a very big, active guild. I love to donate things to them because I know they go to good use. But it's mostly retired people, so it meets at, I can't remember, 9 or 10 o'clock. I'm actually not even sure they're back in person yet, to be honest with you. But that was always just a little bit, because I do work and I am very flexible. I could go to anything I want to go to, but it just, there always was an excuse why this wasn't a good day to go. And then there's another quilt guild in Thousand Oaks that met at night, and it kind of skewed younger age-wise, and it met at 7 p.m. So I tried that one for a while, and I even volunteered at a quilt show. I mean, I really tried to kind of break in socially, and it just never worked. I just never could get any traction with friendships in that quilt. And after I worked a weekend at the quilt show and still felt like I didn't know anyone, I'm like, I'm done. And there is a modern quilt guild in Ventura, and they're pretty awesome. I did a meeting when it was on Zoom during lockdown, because the problem there is that it's about 40 minutes away from me at a time that's rush hour traffic to get there. It's I don't know how to I don't know how to make that work either. So, but I feel like I would like that camaraderie of a quilt guild, just the relationships and the the inspiration and the sort of, I want to call it competitiveness, but just that, thing that kind of keeps you doing stuff because there's an expectation, because you want to show something, like that. So at that big Camarillo Quilt Guild, I felt like there was no way I would get up and show a quilt. I mean, it's there's 200 people there, it just seemed like that would be hard. So anyways, I'm curious, if you guys are members of quilt guilds, do they meet online? Are they in person? Does it add to your life? Does it seem like just an extra burden? I'm just curious about that. All right, let's talk knitting for a few brief moments. I have just been having such an urge to knit lately. And what's funny is that basically because of my new second dog, I can't knit. He just is after the yarn, and I'm working on that big elementary wrap and the actual knitted piece. He's just on it, biting on it, pulling on it like he's a cat. He is so drawn to it. So I don't know really how to work knitting back into my life anymore, which it's making me sad, because I'm just have this itch to knit a sweater. I don't know why. I'm following more knitting accounts on social media, and I need to find the right, I have a sweater pattern that I need to rip out the sleeves and do them again. And then and only then will I allow myself to try to find a new pattern. But I do have a lot of requirements for a knitted sweater. And one of them, I feel like, and tell me if you knitters out there, if you know what I'm talking about, so many of knitted sweaters that I see, the necks are really wide. You can see they're wearing a t-shirt or something under it, and you can see it. I'm like, why are these necks so wide? If I knit a sweater, I do not want it to look homemade. You know what I mean? Not that it needs to look factory made, but there's a difference here. I want it to look handmade, not homemade. I don't know. Do you know that difference? I remember back in the day when the show Nitty Gritty was on, which I loved so much, a professional knitter said that blocking is the difference between homemade and handmade. And I would say that for sewing, it's pressing. Pressing is the difference between homemade and handmade. So anyways, I need to find the right sweater. And every time I think I find one, then I go on to Ravelry and I look at the ones that normal people have knitted. I did this the other day and I thought, oh, this is it. I'm gonna buy this pattern. And then when I saw, like not the perfect 6 foot, 120-pound model wearing it, like I saw a normal person, like, oh yeah, that's not what I'm going for. So we'll see. But I don't even know when knitting's going to come back into my life. It's making me a little sad. But it's funny that I'm thinking about it because I realized last year that basically every June I cast on socks. And I think it's because that happens to me. I mean, I didn't realize it was a pattern until I looked back on it. But it's something that I can do sitting outside. And I always want to be outside, especially in like June and July. The weather's very nice here. But socks are, they're not. It's not like having a sweater or a scarf on your lap. It seems like it's a nice lightweight thing to knit. So anyways, I'm going to have to do some thinking about getting this dog trained so that I can actually get back to knitting sometime. All right, let's move on to books. I don't have as much to talk about as I thought. I usually keep pretty good track of what I've read, and I was going back through my Kindle orders and my Libby orders. I'm just like, you have not really read that much. So I finished The Little Shop of Found Things, which I talked about a couple podcasts ago. So I won't go into that again, but I absolutely did enjoy that book. I'll put it back in the show notes. Right now, I am reading a book called The Forest of Vanishing Stars by Kristen Harmel, or Harmel. I'm not sure how to say that. But this is a recommendation from my friend Patty Judick over at Elm Street Quilts. We have very similar tastes in books. And as soon as she told me about it, I put a request in on Libby, and it took months and months for it to finally come in. And then for whatever reason, I didn't start it right away. This is the story of my life. And then I'm just like, oh my gosh, this book is due in 9 days. I have to read this whole book in 9 days. I need to get going. So I'm in good shape. According to my Kindle reader, I have about 2 hours left to go, and it's still, I have a week, so I'm good. So The Forest of Vanishing Stars is another World War II novel, which I do love ever so much. This is a completely kind of different take on it, I feel. So I think I'm about 60% done, and I don't always love talking about books before I finish them, but I got nothing else to talk about. So it is about a little girl who is taken by a woman when she's 2 years old. She's taken by this woman who is almost, I don't know, almost like a witch or something, meaning that I feel she has a little bit of mystical powers. Like she just knows things. She doesn't know why. She is told to go in her intuition to go take this child from these parents, and she takes her into the forest. The parents are German Nazis, and maybe they weren't Nazis at the time, but they become Nazis. And she is raised in the forest by this old woman who lives to be like 100 years old. And she trains her, like educates her amazingly. They're in this forest, but they, sneak into towns and get books and supplies and things like that. But she trains her to, she's very well read. She knows how to defend herself. She knows how to live in the forest in all 4 seasons. She knows how to make medicines. And if you read Clan of the Cave Bear, I'm getting real like Ayla vibes from this girl. It's different for Ayla because it was like Neanderthal times, and she was like inventing all these things. But this, she just is a fountain of knowledge about the world and science and religion and botany and survivalist, all this stuff. So what's happening when this girl is around 20 is that it's World War II, and this forest is bordering Poland, and so terrible atrocities are happening, and Jews are fleeing their ghettos into the forest to try to survive. And of course, they don't really know how to. And this girl has been raised alone with no other interaction with people really except for this woman her whole life for a couple decades at this point. And then she meets up with these other people that are trying to survive. And so anyways, it's very good. It's a quick read. It's well written. I feel so immersed in the story. So I absolutely recommend it. I'll tell you next time if I don't like the way it ends, but it's a really well-written story called Forest of Vanishing Stars. I always have a book that I'm reading, like on my Kindle, and then in addition to that, I have an audiobook that I'm listening to when I'm going for a walk or doing errands or doing chores or whatever. And so I won't bore you with the details, but man, I'm just re-listening to the Louise Penny books, the Inspector Gamache books that I know and love. And so I have worked through Kingdom of the Blind and A Better Man. So now I'm up to the 2 books that I actually own, and I've listened to a gazillion times. And so I've got to find something new to listen to. But man, I just love those books. They're just the quality of the audio is amazing. And man, they can put me to sleep when that's when I need them to do. I also don't have a ton to talk about for the TV shows and movies, but I did want to highly recommend on Netflix The Summer of Soul. So this is the documentary that won Best Documentary, won an Oscar. You may have missed that fact because it was announced right after the Will Smith, Chris Rock slap. So things were a little bit crazy right then, so you may have missed it. But this was put together by, I don't know if you know who he is, this guy Questlove, and it kind of, it was a 6-week music festival in Harlem in 1969 that was filmed to be a documentary, but it's the same time Woodstock happened, and so apparently all this video footage existed and just sat there for 50 years before Questlove picked it up and turned it into the documentary that it always should have been. And so if you liked, for instance, Get Back, the Beatles, this is very different because that's like, this process of making an album, and it's way longer. This is The Summer of Soul is a 2-hour documentary. But if you just kind of love that inside track on how, these kind of into the music industry, it was great. And you are going to see some very young people that you recognize, like a baby Gladys Knight. Oh my gosh, she looks so young. So it's got Gladys Knight and the Pips, a super young Stevie Wonder. As a matter of fact, I think Stevie Wonder was 19. B.B. King, Sly and the Family Stone, looking so young. Nina Simone, it was amazing. So that was really fun to watch with my husband and my son, who's a jazz drummer and who loves Questlove. So I highly recommend that. We also watched during spring break there when my son was home, The Tinder Swindler. Have you seen this? It's based on a true story of a man who on Tinder would hook up with these women and start relationships with them. And I assume that he kind of targeted rich women because then he would swindle them out of money. But as the show is progressing from the beginning, I'm like, but this girl's got no money. Well, that doesn't matter. He'll still get money out of you. He'll have you borrow money to give to him. So, but it's true story. It has a rather unsatisfying ending, to be honest with you. But it was, if you're just looking for a little bit of a trashy watch, The Tinder Swindler was good. It'll leave you a little bit outraged. We are working our way through Yellowstone. I think we've just got 2 episodes left. So I didn't think that show was going to get me, but it got me. So yeah, I've already canceled our Peacock subscription so that when we're done with that, I can move on to Paramount Plus and start in on my Discovery and Picard obsessions. So that'll be fun. I'll talk to you about that next time. And then I got an email from my local PBS station. So I know every PBS station's a little bit different, so I don't know if this is true for you, but they have just dropped new episodes of Call the Midwife, which I'm excited to get back to. I have not yet. But also Sanditon. And Sanditon is something that I watched a few years ago, and season 2 finally dropped. I mean, I think it's been, time is so weird with COVID, but at least 2 years. As a matter of fact, I tried to start watching episode 1 yesterday of Sanditon of season 2, and I'm just like, I don't remember enough about the show, so I had to start the whole thing over again. I think it's only 8 or 10 episodes, so I got time. So I've started that over, and that's really fun. So it is about a seaside town in England, and this guy who is trying to make it a destination place. That people come, to the seaside in England. And it's, oh gosh, what is the time period? I don't know. People are wearing empire waist dresses and the men are wearing top hats. So it's 1800s, I guess. It's, Pride and Prejudice time. Think of that way. And so it focuses on this young girl who is a farmer's daughter, and she helps this guy whose idea it is to turn Sanditon into a destination. She helps him out, and he invites her to stay with his family. So you've got the young, wide-eyed, innocent girl going to this city where, it's kind of like a holiday city, right? And she's staying with a family that is much wealthier than her. And then there's a woman who is who's old, and she is the main person who has invested her money into turning Sanditon into this place. And she is just, think Maggie Smith from Downton Abbey in a way. It's just like this old grumpy woman that everybody just tries to make happy all the time. And so, of course, they're trying to build up this town. Things are going wrong. It's a very enjoyable, if you love these, period piece PBS type shows, you will love Sanditon. So definitely check that one out. And before we head into our last segment, I'd like to thank Silk and Saunder for being a sponsor of the podcast. Silk and Saunder is a monthly journal subscription. Each month has a theme. I just received my April one, and that theme is radiance. Also, every theme has like a color scheme, and this one has just the most beautiful watercolor roses. There's a whole very springy pink and rose and green theme. And every month has some similar elements. It's got a monthly layout, a weekly layout. It's got plenty of empty pages to do your own freeform journaling. It has reflections about last month, things like that. But then there are new elements every month. Well, also there's a coloring page and a recipe every month, but those change, so that's pretty cool. So the journal prompt pages have to do with the theme. So this month the theme is radiance, and so there's some prompts that say close your eyes and think about what makes you feel most alive and radiant. And then it has you apply some of those thoughts to professional relationships and personal relationships, and basically prompts that are trying to get you to figure out what makes you tick so that you can do more of that. So I love that. There's some exercises, there's poetry, there's places to do sketches, things like that. And there's plenty of time and place for you to plan out your week, figure out what your major goals are for the week, what your major to-dos are, help you track your habits, things like that. So I absolutely love this. I actually have the stickers that have the same color theme as this month, so I'm using those, which is a little out of my wheelhouse usually, but that's kind of adding just a little bit more of a fun element to it. I attended the Saunder Social for the monthly setup, which is one of my most fun things to do. So it's an Eventbrite event. You sign up there. You can search for it there. And I did it just a couple days before April started, so I was able to really transfer things from my March journal into my April and really figure out how I wanted to set up the whole month for success. And so I love that. And there's a person who leads it, and the very active chat where people are putting in their own ideas for different things. So there's just really a lot of inspiration. And then they often save the Spotify playlists that they play in the background. And I have listened to some of those as I'm working, because people really know how to put together good playlists. So anyways, I am still enjoying my Silk and Saunder journal. If you are interested, then there's a link in the show notes, and you can use the code SHE15, which is Simple Handmade Everyday 15, to get 15% off if you want to give a subscription a try. So let's head into our last segment, which I think is going to be about homemaking this time. It's spring here. Are you guys getting the urge to do kind of a spring clean? Now, I know with the Fly Lady method, you never have to spring clean again, which is fine. But I do have the urge to kind of dive a little bit deeper and change out some of my decor stuff. So this week, the zone for me personally was our family room, which is, like our TV room. And I've been wanting to vacuum out, first of all, pull the sofa away from the wall and get behind it. We have hardwoods. And so, man, the dust bunnies really multiply back there. Pull out all the cushions and vacuum and then flip them, for better wear. So I did that with the sofa and 2 chairs. And one of those chairs is a leather chair. And I was like, this could really use a little bit of work. So I have these leather conditioning wipes in that I've purchased before. So it's just kind of like a disinfectant wipe, but it's got leather conditioner. And I wiped that whole leather chair down, and man, does it look shiny and great. And it looks better. It feels better. So that felt really good. So then I was kind of on a roll. And my husband actually had been asking me, when are we going to swap out these fuzzy pillows? In the winter, I have these fuzzy pillows that I personally love, but he does not love them. So I got out the new pillow, or they're, new, and that we're going to rotate them in. I've had them for a while. And actually washed all the pillow covers, even the ones that were in the linen closet. I was just like, I want everything to smell really fresh. Washed all those, hung them out to dry, and so swapped all that out. And then while I was on a washing frenzy, I washed all the quilts that we have in the family room, and there's, maybe 10, and folded and put away the Christmas and even the winter quilts, and brought out more of the lightweight and smaller ones that were just kind of at the bottom of the basket there. And so that all felt really good. Just everything is just kind of clean and fresh. So I don't know if you feel that way, that you just are getting that urge as the light is changing. I want to have flowers on the kitchen table all the time, which Trader Joe's is the place to go for that. So kind of, in that headspace. Oh, and then as long as I was doing the family room, we have this rug in there. We have hardwood, so it's like an 8x10 rug that when I freshened up our family room decor-wise and lightened it up about 3 or 4 years ago, I just got a light rug from Home Depot to kind of see if I liked it. And it's time to replace that rug. So I am on a mission right now to replace that with more one of those kind of faded Persian rug looks. I think I've got one picked out on rugsdirect.com. I tried rugs.com, which I thought I'd find something, did not. So we'll see. I'll let you know if that works out. I got to run that by the hubby, but that's going to feel good to kind of bring that room, to kind of freshen it up. I actually purchased some new pillow covers. So I follow the Nester for a lot of home decor things, and she is a huge advocate of using feather pillow inserts with covers that have zippers so that you can just swap out the pillow covers. So that's what I've been doing here. But I bought some on Amazon that should be here tomorrow they're still kind of I have a very neutral family room. I have a very neutral home, which is kind of kind to me because my husband, I think, really likes color. So we got some blue pillow covers. They're still kind of linen-y and kind of got that kind of a neutrally vibe, but I hope that those work out because that'll interject a little bit of color. And actually the rug that I'm thinking about is very, very muted and neutrally, but ever so slightly blue. And I'm not sure if that would be a mistake because I don't want to lock myself into blue. But if there's any color I want to lock myself into, it is in fact blue. So we'll see how that goes. So speaking of, trying to knock things out here, I have shared before that going into this year, I actually had 4 big things I wanted to do. The first one was plan a big vacation. And we did that. It's in September and it's in Italy, and I'm worried sick that it's going to be a terrible time to go to Europe, but that's done for now. The other 3 were to create a cutting garden. And I got to tell you, so I'm going to tell you about these next 3 goals and how they're going. And spoiler that they're not all going great. We're in April, so I've got 3 months behind me here, and I am not as far along on any of them as I thought I would be, but I am still persisting. I write them in my calendar, in my journal every single week. And then these are my big 3. And what small things can I do to move them forward? And I have been working on them. It's just that it's frustrating and things don't always go as they are planned. So the cutting garden, let's start with the cutting garden. I have, I prepared the bed. I've started seeds. They're in the ground. And where I live, it's recommended that you actually do start them in the ground. And those little seeds, they germinate, they come up, and then something's eating them. So I planted, I don't know, like 100 seeds, and I have about a 10% germination rate actually the germination rate was much higher, but when I went and double checked on them this weekend, there's maybe 10. So I reseeded them all, but I have a feeling the same thing's going to happen. So I'm not sure my cutting garden idea is going to happen this year. It's probably early enough that I could start some inside, or perhaps if I had like some sort of a shelving outside where I could still start them outside, but they wouldn't, with like a, how you have seed starting trays that actually have a little plastic thing over the top. If I didn't have them on the ground, but on shelves or something outside, I kind of wonder if I couldn't bring them along further before I planted them, which would not leave them as susceptible to being eaten. I'm not really sure because I don't know what's eating them, but I'm a little bummed because it would be very expensive to do a cutting garden from purchased, plants. And I'm not sure there's that many that have long enough stems. I feel like bedding plants that you buy at nurseries are often, at most 12 to 18 inches. And, I want 2, 3, 4 feet tall kind of plants. So I don't know. So I've worked very hard. I've taken the steps that I've needed to, but this year just might be a learning curve year, and it might not go anywhere. But it has gotten me outside every weekend, and so now I can kind of transfer that energy over to just preparing the rest of the yard and getting into summer gardening season for just the rest of the yard. The second big goal of mine is my master bathroom renovation. And this one, I have worked so hard on this, and I feel like it's gotten almost nowhere. But finally, I think we have picked out a vanity. We're going with a custom cabinet. We're using Home Depot. And the last thing that was my foiled attempt was we were going to go order it yesterday, and then the lady wasn't there. But we're going to get that ordered this week, and it takes 14 weeks for that cabinet to come in, so that during that 14 weeks that I'm going to figure out the flooring, the sink, the faucet, the paint, the light, and all that, and have those decisions made, things purchased, so when they come in to do that vanity, then everything else will happen pretty quickly, hopefully. So my goal is that will be done by the end of the summer. But just finally having a decision and making progress has felt really good on that. And it is crazy expensive. This whole project's going to cost twice what I thought it was. And I might just be out of touch, but everything is so expensive right now. But it needs to be done. It's going to be done. And then the last one is my health, which is to lose some weight and to establish a strength training routine. Thank you for those of you that have sent some strength training people to follow my way. I really appreciate that. The strength training thing, I found a good program. I have not been super consistent on it, so I need to do better there. But I've been tracking my food on this app called Healthy, with an I at the end instead of a Y, which is honestly a Weight Watchers knockoff. And you know what? Tracking works for me, even though I wish it didn't. I wish I could do it other ways. And so I've been pretty successful and have lost some weight on that. So I'm just going to keep that going, figuring out what works. Kind of fell off it for a while, so that is that's where the proof really comes in, is because you're not going to do it perfectly forever, right? So now I've been back on track for a few days, and that feels good. So the rebound is important. So yeah, that's what's kind of going on. I'm a big 3. I'm curious if you guys, let me just say that really hyper focusing on 3 big goals is really working for me. I'm usually the kind of person that wants to set 15 goals because they're all the things I want to do. And then I don't get anywhere, but I'm just like, if I got to 2023 and these were the only things that I could really go back and say, let's just say like I'm down to goal weight. We did that bathroom project and we went on a good vacation. And the cutting garden was a loss, but I tried. I'd be super happy. So he's, like really hyper-focusing is really helping me. So I'm curious if you've tried that, or are you the kind of person that sets a million goals, or can really focus on a few, or maybe, you don't set goals at all and you just are, more free on your whims. I don't know. So that's it for this week. There were no new reviews. So I would just, again, like to encourage you, wherever you listen to the podcast, I think most people, according to the stats, listen to it on Apple Podcasts, but wherever you are, I would appreciate a rating and review. And just so that you know, this podcast is available on Spotify and on YouTube. I feel like a few people have kind of discovered that it's on YouTube. Now, that's not a video podcast. It's just audio with like one picture up. Maybe one day I will do a little bit more of a video podcast so I could show you things, and that would be fun, but I don't have the setup for that right now. But anyways, if you would rate and review, I would really appreciate it. And have a wonderful week. You can find me online at my blog, Simple Handmade Everyday, that always has show notes for every episode, on Instagram at Kristen Esser, and please consider joining the Simple Handmade Everyday private Facebook group so that we can keep the conversation going.